back to my adventure learning the Uilleann pipes. It's been a good long while since I put one of these out, so if you're watching them in the moment as I put them out, it seems like it's been probably 6 weeks or so. If you're watching these much further in the future, then this won't make sense, but we're in the middle of coronavirus nonsense right now, and it's wreaked havoc on lots of people's lives. Mine is no exception, but I have been practicing a bit, and I have some new stuff to put together, so let me just dive right into what I've got set up today. So first thing is sort of a callback all the way to episode 1, where in the intro of that I talked about the struggle and confusion about putting the instrument on and how to kind of hold everything correctly. It's an ongoing process. I'm tweaking what works for me and getting rid of things that don't. And I'm going to share with you right now some of the changes I've made since that episode. So I talked about shortening the blowpipe. For a while that seemed like a mistake, actually. It seemed like I had shortened it too much. But I've made a few changes since then that make it feel like the correct length again. So one thing that's changed is that if you can go back and look at the other videos, earlier I was holding the chanter at a pretty low angle, something about like this, which I had no particular reason why I did it. I had maybe seen a few pipers do it. I felt when I sat down it kind of felt natural, but as I've been tackling some other skills and continue to practice, it started to actually create problems for me with tension in the top hand and a few other things, and I would kind of slide around on my little leather pad here. I felt like I was spending way too much effort doing something that had nothing whatsoever at all to do with making music, with just trying to keep this located correctly. So I spent some time and I watched a lot of Uilleann pipers on YouTube, and there are definitely some who hold it way down here and it works for them, and that's great. But for me right now is just too much of a struggle. So I have switched a bit to holding it upright a bit more. And that did several things. One is that in doing that, it moved the whole instrument over this way, right? So that blowpipe that I've begun to feel too short now seem the right length because I'm pulling it back over this way. Also move the bellows a little bit further back, but not a ton. I had to change the rotation. I had to kind of spin this a little bit to get the fingers in the right place. But now with gravity doing more of the work, holding the chanter to my leg than me pushing it, some of the things that I was struggling with finger technique wise are a little easier. Not easy, but a little easier. So the drones sit in a little bit a better place as well. So those are some of the things that have changed. Another side effect of all of these changes is that the bag rests lower under my arm than it did before. Again, this is also something that I have seen from watching other players on YouTube and just trying it out a little bit myself. The bag now kind of sits really right between the middle of my elbow over here, and the bottom of the bag is actually resting on the top of my leg. Whereas before I was kind of hiking it up, and when I was holding it, the bag wasn't touching my leg at all. The final change that I've made is that I'm curling my fingers around the chanter a little bit more, not quite like this, but part of that comes from the fact that, for one, this day chanter has no scallops in it. It's completely just a round tube, so the holes are curved, they're not flat. And with the bellows action, that was creating some leaks that I did not notice on my small pipes, because on the small pipes the finger holes are really tiny, but on these some of them are Highland sized. In particular, this middle finger, the one that would be responsible for playing the F, when the bellows arm was all the way out, I would get little leaks from the inside, right? Just here, I would get little leaks because that hole is so large. So I've been working on curving those fingers a little bit more, and I just warm up with some drones and work the bellows and try not to get any air leaks coming through. So I'm going to go through that right now. For this entire video, I'm actually going to be playing with 2 drones. So up until this point, I've just been playing with the baritone, but I have the bass drone open now as well. Partly just because I like hearing it, but also because I've temporarily misplaced the cork that goes in it, so it is what it is. So right now, just trying to cycle the bellows, keep the drones relatively steady, and not have any air leak from my fingers, particularly on the bottom hand, as I pull the bellows all the way out. That's pretty good. One tiny little leak, but I was also talking. Anyway, so that's how I start my practices these days, is just get settled into holding the instrument and get reacquainted with the bellows since the last time I touched them, and then just making sure that everything feels comfortable. Okay, moving on. So I have been doing some discrete skill work on several different things. I've been going back to some of the older tunes, but without a doubt, the biggest challenge I've had so far is consistency of pressure when playing high D. I've done numerous things to take a look at this. One of them was manipulating the reed. So I had a lesson a couple weeks ago. It was over over Zoom or Facebook video, whatever, one of those. And actually pulled the reed out, which I'm going to do now very, very carefully. And attempted to adjust the bridle to see if we could make it a little more robust, so it was a little less touchy to pressure on the top hand. Now you can see I've wrapped it in a bunch of Teflon tape. Part of the reason is because this bridle, or this staple type thing that's on here, it was just resting at the bottom, loose. It was not putting any pressure on the reed whatsoever. And when I pushed it up, I could not get it to stay unless I pushed it way up. And when I pushed it way up, the reed was so open that it wouldn't even play at all. So I had to kind of build up a base below it with this Teflon tape so that the reed could sit in a spot a little bit higher up without completely choking off the reed. I've had quite mixed success with this. It seems tiny little adjustments make big changes, or at least I perceive them as big changes. I think it's at about as close as it can get right now to being where the reed is opened up enough that I get a bit more stability, but not so open that I can't play it. Even then, I still struggle. So let me show you what I mean. So what I'm going to do now, after I get this positioned correctly again, is just play a high D through several cycles of the bellows. And my only goal at this point is to just keep that note consistent in terms of tone. And obviously what that means, another way of saying that is pressure on the bag. And hopefully you'll hear the struggle that I'm talking about. That actually wasn't too bad. That was a pretty solid high D. It wavered a little bit, but not in the way that I mean. So let me see if I can try and do a little bit less good of a job, and you'll hear what I'm talking about. So it wavers in a couple different ways, right? It'll waver if the pressure becomes too light, and it'll waver if the pressure becomes too hard. again, I've spent a lot of time tweaking where the bridle is on this reed, so this is about as good as I think it's going to get. Another thing that I've been trying to help me understand, is this a skill thing or is this a instrument setup thing, is I have borrowed another day chanter. My good friend and instructor Matt Willis is letting me borrow this to see what's the difference. So I'm going to plug this in and do the same thing. I don't think this is quite pitched the same, so it'll probably sound a bit out of tune against the drones. If it does, I might switch them off. So about the same, right? It's still sort of difficult for me to do. So what this tells me is that it's me. It's not the instrument, even though I definitely had to tweak mine quite a bit to get it to be as stable as it is now. So this is just going to be something I have to beat down with practice. Hopefully I will, through the rest of the video today, I will get those high Ds to play the way that I want to. I promise you I will make a sour face if one comes out that does not sound good, and you'll probably hear it yourself as well. But that's the struggle. That's the big thing across all of the other skills that I'm working on that I still continue to struggle with, is getting that pressure correct. And it can obviously matter a ton where I'm coming from. You know, was I just playing a low E? Was I coming from, am I coming from the top octave? All sorts of things, right? So that continues to be a struggle, but working on it. Okay, moving on to the 5th lesson. Okay, so the next thing that I'm going to go over today is something that I previewed at the end of last episode, which is these staccato triplets. Here's my little worksheet. We've got 3 different ones here you can see on this line. The one that I previewed, as it were, in Maggie of the Woods was this top octave GFE triplet, which was like this. Still working on that, right? But that's the idea, is that it's 2 quick notes and kind of a slightly longer third note on those. So all played staccato. There's 2 other ones that I've got here. So there is a B, C, D. Those notes there. Now, apparently, some players and on some chanters, you can just use a single finger B. I'm not doing that right now. I'm using both fingers to play the B, as you would if it was a natural B. Maybe at some point I'll get around to the point where I'm trying it like that, but based on some feedback from my teacher and watching a few other players, I'm sticking with 2 fingers for the B. So the third one is a ACA triplet, and this one you always play as if it was a C sharp, not a C natural, regardless of what the staff says. If the staff says G or it says D, the key signature, doesn't matter. You play this with just a single finger. So that one is played. That one I've been working on the least, which you can probably hear in the technique that I have. For one, obviously that GFE triplet I've been playing for several weeks now in Maggie of the Woods. And this BCD triplet I've been practicing in a tune, which I'll get to here in a minute. Now, I have an exercise I use to warm these up. And it is one at a time out of each of the 3 fingers, playing a little cadence to get used to that finger doing that movement, or those 2 fingers in the case of this one, well, and this one as well, doing those movements all by themselves. So here's how that sounds. pressure there. Obviously need to hit the books on that one a little bit more. Next for the BCD triplet. Remember I said sour face when I got the wrong high D, so that was over squeezed. That was too hard. Partly of that I think is coming from the fact that I have the drone switched off and I've been playing with the drones a lot. But let's see if I can get that right again. And then lastly, I'll try this ACA triplet. There you go. Still not putting in a ton of work on these yet. Expect to see me revisiting this topic in subsequent episodes. All right, so let me move on to applying this in a tune. I have another little tune here called the Heather Breeze. It's a reel, and it lets me practice this B, C, D triplet. Side note, this tune is the first time so far in my Uilleann piping adventure where I've come across a note change directly from an F to a C natural. That is quite a interesting sensation. With all of my years of piping, I've not had to make a switch on the top hand that was not accompanied by a note, a finger change on the bottom hand, right? So that was pretty interesting. Sometimes I actually still miss that because I want to put this finger down. It feels like that's something I should do. That said, let me go ahead and put this in, give this a shot. You'll hear that BCD triplet at the end of the part. Not doing the triplets real fast right now. I don't quite have the dexterity. I know it will take months to get those sounding really, really crisp and sharp, just as the same way it took months, in some cases over a year, to get really, really solid embellishments in my Highland piping, tarluas and D-throws and that sort of thing. So this is gonna be a slow process. It's not fun, but I know that that's what's in front of me. Okay. To wrap up this section, let me just give that a go one more time, maybe a little bit faster. Let's see what we can get. Too bad, not great, but this is the state of the world right now. I'm actually, I sort of hinted at it in the intro to this video, being sheltered in place and with everything going on, quixotically enough, I'm finding I have less time to practice these than before. I won't get into the details of that, why, but for the foreseeable future, these videos will probably not be coming out quite as fast as I originally anticipated, partly just because I want to make some progress between doing these. It takes a bit of time to film it and to edit it all, and I don't want to force you to watch incremental progress. I want to make some bigger steps. So, that said, let's end on something fun. This is something I often do. I think I've talked about it before, where at the end of my practice sessions, I play something that's fun, that's enjoyable. that reminds me of why I embarked on this journey in the first place. I could be wrong, but I don't think there's many people who start learning this instrument that don't at some point at least try to play this tune, if not outright want to play this tune. So I will give a stab at this little melody here. I promise almost certainly it will be something that you recognize. Couldn't help it, but there you go. Thank you for watching. I hope that you're staying safe and that your family and friends are doing the same as well. Until next time, thank you for watching and sláinte.